Have you been told you need to stop doing what you love, whether it's exercise, running, or a sport? Well, here at Dynamic, we don't like that answer. In this podcast, we'll talk to leaders in the health and wellness space from Southwest Florida to get the solutions you need to get you back to doing what you love. Welcome to the Dynamic Naples Podcast. What's going on, Naples? Dr. Chris here, back with some more nutrition. Today, I want to be talking about cholesterol. All right, this is a big one. It's a big deal, and I feel like what your stance is on cholesterol completely dictates what type of diet you're going to adopt. So everything I'm going to tell you is probably going to be controversial and probably opposite of what you've learned. So what we learn in school is LDL cholesterol is bad and HDL cholesterol is good. And basically, you should lower LDL. That's what we learned in physical therapy school. I've talked to a handful of physicians, and they basically confirm that's the same thing that they learn. I don't know if programs are updated or not, but that's a pretty simplistic approach. And just off the get-go, why would our body make something that's just bad for us? And like all animals make it too. So why, would so many people and animals have this elevated LDL? So to me, that suggests that there's a flaw in the logic there. I'm going to be posting a lot of links in this one with research articles, some presentations, things like that, because I know that this is kind of a controversial topic. So just to rehash, in the last episode, I talked about some of the problems with the research that Ansel Keys put forth, and he's the one that really proposed the diet heart hypothesis, the quote-unquote clogging of the arteries, which has led to this fear of LDL. So we know there's a lot of problems with this research. So I'll start off by saying that elevated LDL is only really a problem in the presence of a diet that's caused insulin resistance or inflammation or both. And there's a lot of studies these days coming out basically supporting exactly that idea. So I'm going to just go over a couple of them real quick. So a recent study in the Expert Review of Clinical Pharmacology published a literature review entitled LDL Does Not Cause Cardiovascular Disease. So reviews like this are the highest order of evidence, and I'm just going to read to the excerpts from this study. So here's one. If high LDL causes cardiovascular disease, LDL of untreated patients with cardiovascular disease should be higher than normal. However, in a large American study, including almost 140,000 patients with acute myocardial infarction, that's heart attack, their LDL at the time of admission to hospital was actually lower than normal. In another study with the same finding, the authors decided to lower the patient's LDL even more, but at a follow-up 3 years later, the total mortality among those with an LDL below 105 was twice as high compared to those with a higher LDL, even after adjustment of confounding variables. So they lowered the LDL and the mortality increased. So kind of the opposite of what we learned. Here's another one. If high LDL was the major cause of atherosclerosis, so that's the plaques in the arteries, and cardiovascular disease, people with the highest LDL should have shorter lives than people with low values. However, in a recent systematic review of 19 cohort studies, including more than 68,000 elderly people greater than 60 years of age, we found just the opposite. In the largest cohort study, those with the highest LDL levels lived even longer than those on statin treatment. In addition, numerous Japanese studies have found that high LDL is not a risk factor for coronary heart disease mortality in women of any age. They concluded in the study the idea that high cholesterol levels in the blood are the main cause of cardiovascular disease is impossible because people with low levels become just as atherosclerotic as people with high levels, and the risk of suffering from cardiovascular disease is the same or higher. The cholesterol hypothesis has been kept alive for decades by reviewers who have used misleading statistics, excluded the results from unsuccessful trials, and ignored numerous contradictory observations. So that's just one study. I'll dive into another in a little bit here. But there's an idea that I want to go over that kind of doesn't make sense either. So one of the ideas with LDL is that it's smaller, and that's kind of like it gets its way into the arteries because of the size of the particle. And while it's true that it's smaller than VLDL, which is very low density lipoprotein, it's still a lot larger than HDL. You can look at these charts. So HDL is the one that they say, high and happy. That's the good one. LDL is the bad one, right? But if their theory is that the size of the particle matters, HDL is even smaller than LDL. So just Google a chart of this, and you'll see it's very clear. So that brings me to my next point. Like, what is this LDL stuff? So first of all, LDL and HDL aren't even cholesterol. They're just molecules that transport cholesterol around. But it's kind of like a bus. It's like a magic bus that can shrink as it delivers stuff. So what happens is you ingest food, all right? Your liver processes it. Cholesterol is produced from the food we eat. Then it goes into the VLDL and then into the LDL. So basically what happens is as the molecules going around from site to site, from like organ to organ, because by the way, you need cholesterol. That's a builder. So say it goes to like a muscle cell, it recognizes the LDL, allows the contents to go into that, into the muscle cell, and the cholesterol is delivered. And then the molecule shrinks a little bit, and as it goes around delivering the cholesterol, it eventually becomes HDL. So that's sort of the normal process. Another study in the British Journal of Sports Medicine came out in 2017, and it was titled, "Saturated Fat Does Not Clog the Arteries. Coronary heart disease is a chronic inflammatory condition, the risk of which can be effectively reduced from healthy lifestyle interventions." So the authors, they go on to say that the risk of LDL has been exaggerated, and the diet, exercise, and improving insulin sensitivity all reduce inflammation and reduce cardiovascular risk. So, I mean, the list goes on. There are lots of these studies, but yet the dogma still persists. So what is really going on here? Well, as usual, the body is nuanced, and our understanding of cholesterol and lipoproteins has vastly improved. I'll definitely post some videos from Dr. Kate Shanahan, Dr. Paul Mason. There's many others that are really sort of spearheading this whole idea. But I'm going to post these two that I think do a great job. These are video presentations that do a great job going into depth on these topics. But I'm basically going to summarize it for you. So I already mentioned how it works under normal circumstances. So one of the other key players I didn't mention is ApoB. It's a type of protein that's on the surface of the lipoprotein molecule. So on LDL, there's a protein, and then when it gets to the site for delivery, the receptors on that site recognize that protein, that ApoB protein, and that's like the key card that allows the cell to deliver the cholesterol. It allows the LDL to deliver the cholesterol to this cell. What can happen is sometimes that ApoB protein will be damaged. So now it's like having a key that doesn't work. It gets to the site where it's supposed to deliver the cholesterol. It does not allow it in, and then now it's left to circulate. Okay, that's the problem. That's where we start to get damage to arterial walls and gets atherosclerosis. So then the question is, what damages that ApoB protein? And it's a diet high in processed sugars and or vegetable seed oils. More to come on seed oils. I'll do a whole podcast on that because those are super inflammatory for the human diet. They basically are not supposed to be in the human diet. But the sugar thing is about insulin sensitivity. So that's another podcast I'll be doing. I'll get into deep depth on that. But just know that a diet that is high in carbohydrate consumption, particularly in simple sugars, tends to lead to insulin resistance, and that will create chronic inflammation and damage this LDL molecule. Lastly, I just want to point out there is a condition called Smith-Lemli-Opitz syndrome. So this is a pretty terrible one. Kids are born with this inability to produce enough cholesterol, and they don't do well. They die young for the most part. And the treatment, the suggested treatment for it is to give them a diet that's high in egg yolks, so really high in cholesterol, and they do way better. Right? So all this stuff is adding up to a bunch of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's time that we start questioning these things and making better nutritional decisions for ourselves. We have to bear in mind that we're going to get things wrong, and evidence is going to keep piling up, and we'll get new ideas, and we have to update these things. So these ideas have been around since the 50s. I think it's time for an update. So that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned. I'll have some more nutrition coming shortly. Do you have unexplained pain, or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great way to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's liver function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It's sent to you with free shipping, and you get your results in 2 to 5 days, no physician referral needed. Use the code DPT30 for 30% off. Go to letsgetchecked.com and use the code DPT30. Did you know that you can get started with physical therapy without a physician's referral? Physical therapists don't just solve pain, we get down to the root cause and keep it from coming back. We also discuss all things health, such as nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you feel that you could use some help, let's get on a free consult call. Go to www.dynamicnaples.com and sign up for a free call. Also, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us spread the message. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.